Zane, finding a bunch of success. The defensive line is electric to watch. From the outside looking in, you guys had, 7 sacks against Northwestern. I think it was like 16 TFLs, the front 7 put together. That culture, that attitude, that swagger that you guys are playing with, what does that stem from?
It just stems from wanting to be the best in the nation. We talk about it all the time in practice. Going against the offensive line, they help us get better every day. So when we go against any other opponent, we feel like nobody can match us.
You feel like nobody can match you. The confidence that comes from having a guy like Kalen King behind you, the safety room, Johnny Dixon, who's a guy that we don't talk about enough, who is a legit NFL corner.
Correct.
Do you feel like Florida jit, twerking?
No, you can't be saying all that. You can't say jit. Leave it at jit.
My fault. But do you feel like there's an extra layer of confidence with the secondary you got behind you when you play?
Yeah, definitely, man. So we all work off each other. So say we mess up on a play, I feel like in the back end, they're going to help us get it all right with a pick or something like that.
Yeah. And, Doc, again, we got a D lineman also. I'm going to ask you, you guys are battling, I would assume, almost every day to an extent. How have you seen Zane develop from year 1 to year 2?
And just what he talked about before, I mean, his run game fit is very different from how it was when he first got here. He knows his leverage. Zane plays with great leverage. He can get to extension in the run game. In the pass game, I think his strength's always been he can get your edge. He's real good at getting the hip and reading the hands of offensive linemen, which is underplayed. Some of that stuff is just natural, I feel like, with him. Because obviously there's a skill, you drill it, you work it. But I think he naturally sees the game a little slower. And I think now that he's getting older, he's starting to see it slower. Would you agree too?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he's starting to see that veteran, what veterans see, that veteran IQ. And I think when he's playing good, the guys around him are playing good too. Because people don't understand with defensive line play, you're setting up, you do your job, you really set up a linebacker to make a play. Or you're doing your job, you're setting up a DN to make a play on a T or an ET or something like that. So I think his recognition of the defense and his recognition of just football IQ and offensive line play has just grown.
Yeah, and you talk about football IQ. We talked about the playbook already, and that being a big adjustment when you got here. Manny Diaz, if you haven't been paying attention, it's like almost every play, there's some type of pressure coming from somewhere. It's a D lineman stunting to this gap and somebody looping here. And as an athlete, as a guy who runs a 4.6 and squats 500 pounds, how many times? Do you feel like it adds a new element to your game when you're able to jump around and put offensive linemen in situations where they got to be athletic with you?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely does. I feel like when I'm moving, certain no old linemen be able to stick with me, and if they are, then I got to use something else to defeat them.
No doubt about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree. At the end of the day, man, we got to call a spade. And Coach Troutwine says it all the time. We need to use angles because we're not as athletic as, there's some freaks out there. There's some freak offensive linemen like, why'd you just raise your hand? There's some real actual athletic freaks out there that play offensive line, like Olu out there. Like Olu, he's different. There's some guys that are different out there, right? But realistically, we have to use angles in order to beat guys like Zane. Like they have natural speed. So how do we beat speed? We beat speed with angles. So when you have a guy like that, though, that you need to change up your technique and change up, how you set on somebody because they have that threat of speed, a vertical speed rush up front, or just maybe even in the twist game, being able to loop around a tackle. That's a game plan for OC. That's a nightmare. It's a matchup nightmare when you have guys like that.
Yeah, and on the defensive side, when you're a guy who knows you are like this, another guy, OA was like this with he's a 4-3 guy as a DM, which is unheard of. You know that O-linemen have to set differently. You know that they have to play you different in the run game. They got to take different angles and different steps. Do you feel like you're at the point of your game now where you're starting to realize that and you're able to take advantage of it with the way that you align or the way you get off on the ball or whatever that may look like?
Yeah. I feel like that's the next step for me. Just trying to play with what I do, knowing that they got to change up what they do to match my play style.
Yeah, it's funny. Coaches used to say it all the time when I was playing, but playing D-line is kind of like being a pitcher. Like, you got a fastball, and like one guy's fastball might be a bull rush. One guy's fastball might be a inside move, but you better have a change up off of that for when an offensive lineman like Doc wants to take away your best part of your game. Yeah.
And Jerry, would you say that's the same thing in the passing game? I'm not too well versed on the passing game.
For you talking, is it from a tight end aspect?
Yeah,
blocking wise?
Running routes.
Blocking. For us, based on our pass game, we expect to do a lot. Like I talked to you guys before, we can change our route up mid coverage based on how the backer or safety is playing us. Looking at the corners, we go against corners, different matchups too. So it's just our routes are all based off coverage and how do we bend play. So like we convert hitch versus some type of coverage. In the pass game, blocking, we expected to do the same thing that y'all do. Mm-hmm. Pass pro, like stop the DN from getting to the quarterback because like the pass games you probably have seen, like we've been used a lot in the run game and also in the pass game from a protection standpoint. So it's pretty much the same, but just from the running routes aspect, it's just based on the coverages and everything for us.
Mm-hmm. Man, you got block the ends. You know, sometimes in certain concepts, man, you got to get linebackers, you got to get D tackles, depending on what. Yeah. Maybe sometimes the pass pro breaks down. You got to help us out, man. This is how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, it's definitely like calls that you guys make that we have to alert out for a 3 technique looping out or a 4-eye looping out. Mm-hmm. So it basically, like we expect to do everything. That's something that Coach Franklin preach all the time is. Mm-hmm. Like at a tight end at Penn State, you have to be able to do everything at a high level to actually get on the field here. So it's something that at our room we look at and we want the offense to run through us because we expect to do the most and we want to do it at a high standard.